Today's lesson is woods and hybrids. We've gone through irons and wedges. One of the things that we're going to start to do is try and understand how we move from those wedges, irons, into those hybrids and woods. So most of our setup is very important in woods and hybrids. Everybody tends to struggle with where do they place it in their stance, ball position. Is the stance wider? Is it the same? Let's spend a moment just kind of going over that setup. So I believe that when we're using a wood or hybrid, our stance width will get a little bit wider. I typically go through a change where I have people kind of start with their feet together and then start measuring. So if I had an iron, it's going to be little step with my left foot, little step with my right foot. Okay, that's going to set me up more or less right in the middle. If I have a hybrid in my hand, it's a very small step with my left foot, bigger step with my right foot. That tends to move the ball placement a little bit more forward. With my driver, feet together, I'm going to turn my left foot out just a little bit and then big step with my right foot. Okay, so that's a good simple way to get ball position and stance width. For me, I look at these clubs kind of setting up the idea of the club in the same spot, but then the ball position moves forward. So if I'm setting up an iron, what you would notice is when I'm right here, I have the club head right in the center of my stance. Okay, if I am hitting a hybrid, what I end up doing is I put the back of the club, so this position here, so this part of the club right here, in the middle of my stance. In which you can see that ball position naturally goes a little bit more forward. So when I'm set up with this hybrid here, I got the back of the club, middle of my stance, and then we can see that ball position's a little bit forward. I do the same exact thing with my driver. So I'm set up here. I'm going to put the back of the club in the middle of my stance, and you can see now all of a sudden that ball position is up towards my left toe. So I think little things like that always help you out with finding that setup in that ball position. Now, once we've got that ball position, we're going to go over kind of the smaller setup changes which help us hit the ball just a little bit better. So because we're trying to hit these hybrids and woods with a much sweepier motion, so less dig, so digging the club versus sweeping the club, we're going to kind of just set up our shoulders, maybe a small little change to help us out. So again, back of the club, middle of the stance. Okay, and then when I'm set up, I'm basically going to just push my left foot forward to help my chest stay centered, maybe slightly behind the ball. So again, I'm set up here, back of the club, middle of the stance, and then right at the start, I'm going to kind of shift my left hip out, which kind of pulls my chest a little bit behind me. Now when I set up like this, it's easier for me to stay a little bit more behind the ball. A common swing flaw as we start to move into the woods and hybrids is as we're set up, we're used to hitting an iron, so we tend to try and get our chest in front of the ball. And we always want to remember when we're hitting these clubs, one, it's a completely different impact with the ground, and two, when we're setting up, this setup, if I get here, like kind of like feeling as if it's an iron, but now the ball is more forward, now I'm leaning left, my left shoulder's lower, and I've got these shoulders open. If I can get that feeling, setting up back of the club in the middle, pushing that hip, pushing into my hip a little bit, it kind of sets my shoulders a little bit more square and a little bit more tilted upwards. That's going to help me with the contact with the ground. Okay, now let's kind of get the idea of this driver. So driver is the same thing, okay, same setup-wise, but the T position is kind of the biggest difference here. So one of the things that I tend to show a lot of people is with my driver, you can see It's about 1.5 golf balls tall. So that means that when I'm setting up with a driver and trying to hit a driver correctly, I need to make sure that my tee height is at least, at a minimum, 1 ball tall. So even if I set the ball on the ground, I can see my little plastic tee is right up to the top of it. This would be the minimum height for a driver. We could tee it up higher. We just typically wouldn't want to tee it up any lower. So I'm going to set up in the same way that I did with the hybrid. I'll even go through my little feet together setup, feet together, left foot kind of turns out a little bit, drop that right foot back, and then I'm set up here, and I'm pushing that hip forward. Okay, as I sit up there, now I've got those shoulders tilted up a little bit, hips are square, I'm in a good position to hit the ball. Now I'm going to take it to the top and swing through. Now, one of my favorite drills for a driver to get the idea of hitting up on it and trying to get that club to be delivered in the correct way is setting up and getting a practice swing where we actually brush the ground. So typically I see a lot of people hitting down on their driver. So I'm going to set up here. I'm going to take a practice swing. The key for the practice swing is letting the bottom of the club bottom out by my right foot. So I'm going to take it up, bottom out, bottom out, bottom out. Attack angle is kind of a buzzword in driving. Everybody wants to hit up on a driver, wants to get the high ball flight, low spin. And it's not really a thought process like, okay, I'm going to set up and I'm going to really hit up on it. The idea of hitting up is allowing the club to bottom out sooner. So allowing it to get low to the ground so that as I'm driving through impact, it can get high and around my shoulder. So let's set up again. Let's practice our angle of attack drill. Brushing by my right foot, then swinging through. Okay, now that I got a couple of those, set up, get my hip forward. And now I'm going to swing right through it, and I'm going to get more of a upwards attack angle. As we start getting better and better with that, it's easier to straighten out, but the backspin on a drive is generally what helps us hit the ball a little bit straighter and a little bit longer. So when we have that backspin lower, as we can see in the corner there, 27, 47, I want to lower that down so I could hit it just a little bit straighter. I'm going to hit up on it a little bit more, so I'm letting the club land a little bit further back. Okay, and then I'm swinging right through. So everything else is the same. I was able to hit up on it a little bit, drop the spin rate down, and then I hit a much straighter drive. So in today's lesson, we're really just kind of working on these setup changes, allowing ourselves to make the same swing that we were making with those irons wedges, changing the setup to kind of maximize our efficiency with these hybrids and woods. So give that a shot and let me know how it goes.